Hello and welcome to News on the Hour. In the next 1 hour, we'll get you all the latest news and updates from India and across the globe. It's a power-packed 1 hour and reporters and correspondents will also be joining us in the next 1 hour. Let's start with the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is holding internal meeting on measures to tackle COVID-19 pandemic. PM will later interact with chief ministers of high-burden states. Will also hold a meeting with leading oxygen manufacturers of India via video conferencing. Corporate Affairs Ministry appeals to leaders of corporate India to come forward and supplement government efforts in view of COVID surge. Ministry allows spending of corporate social responsibility funds for setting up makeshift hospitals and COVID care facilities. Big relief for people being treated for COVID in hospitals. Finance Ministry issues a clarification saying that it is necessary to provide cashless insurance facility to all hospitals for treatment of COVID-19. Health Ministry issues revised clinical guidance for management of adult COVID-19 patients. More than 13.54 crore vaccine shots administered nationwide so far till day 97 of vaccination drive. 5 states account for 60% of India's total caseload. Canada suspends flights from India and Pakistan, citing increased COVID-19 cases detected in travellers arriving from these countries. UAE too bans all flights from India for 10 days. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg in Global Climate Summit address says global warming making the world more dangerous. Also states floods, forest fires and droughts increase competition for scarce resources and fuel tensions and conflict. Back home in Maharashtra, 12 patients die after fire breaks out at COVID center in Virar in Palghar district. PM Modi expresses condolences, approves ex gratia of rupees 2 lakh each from Prime Minister National Relief Fund. EC bans roadshows and vehicle rallies for remaining phases in West Bengal. PM to address voters virtually today. Mamata Banerjee also to campaign on virtual mode. And in sports, Indian women create history at 2021 IBA World Boxing Championships in Poland. All boxers win gold medals. Well, let's start with our top story. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is holding internal meeting on measures to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. Prime Minister Modi has cancelled his visit to West Bengal for today, and the high-level meetings focus on the prevailing COVID-19 situation. Later, PM Modi will interact with chief ministers of high-burden states on the COVID-19 situation. Will also hold a meeting with leading oxygen manufacturers in the country via video conferencing. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Thursday chaired a high-level meeting to review the oxygen supply across the country and discuss ways and means to boost its availability. Multiple measures are being taken care by the centre, states and different authorities to ensure lives are saved. As a report on the different efforts being made, first to save the lives of those who have been inflicted by the disease, with the PM driving the effort to ensure oxygen is made available to all those who need it for their survival.
Amid the surging COVID-19 cases and reports of shortage of oxygen and medicines, the Union government is taking proactive steps to help state governments ease up the situation. Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired a high-level meeting to review the oxygen supply across the country and discuss ways and means to boost its availability. Prime Minister called for a multi-pronged rapid approach to increase production of oxygen, speed of distribution and using innovative ways to provide oxygen support to health facilities. He spoke about the need to fix responsibility with the local administration in cases of obstruction to delivery of oxygen. PM stressed on the need to ensure faster transportation of oxygen to the states and the need to come down heavily on hoarding. Oxygen supplies to states is steadily increasing. Against the present demand from 20 states of 6,785 metric tons per day of liquid medical oxygen, Government of India has from 21st of April allocated 6,822 metric tons per day to these states. Availability of liquid medical oxygen has been increased by about 3,300 metric tons per day, with contributions from private and public steel plants, industries, oxygen manufacturers, as well as through prohibition of supply of oxygen for non-essential industries. Centre is working with states to operationalize the sanctioned PSA oxygen plants as soon as possible. Steps are also being taken to rapidly increase the availability of cryogenic tankers by converting nitrogen and argon tankers, import and airlifting of tankers, as well as manufacturing them. Representatives from the medical community also spoke about the need for judicious use of oxygen and how an audit in some states has decreased oxygen demand without affecting the condition of patients. Railways is being used for rapid and non-stop long-distance transport of tankers. First rake has reached from Mumbai to Vizag to transport 105 metric tons of liquid medical oxygen. Another oxygen express started its journey from Lucknow to Bokaro via Varanasi to fulfill the requirements of medical oxygen in Uttar Pradesh. For the movement of the train, a green corridor was created between Lucknow to Varanasi. Similarly, empty oxygen tankers are also being airlifted to oxygen suppliers to reduce one-way journey time in oxygen supply. The centre has also issued fresh instructions to states regarding uninterrupted supply of medical oxygen. The National Executive Committee constituted under the Disaster Management Act has issued these instructions. There should be no restriction on movement of vehicles carrying medical oxygen between states. States should direct their transport authorities to ensure unhindered movement. Oxygen producers or replenishers should not be bound to service only the state where they're located. They should be free to supply to any state. No time restriction should be imposed on entry of oxygen tankers into municipal or city limits. Seizure of tankers by state authorities is not permitted, nor can they force them to divert supplies. States and union territories will adhere to the distribution plan drawn up from time to time by National Executive Committee. DM, DC, SSP, SP and other such officials will be personally responsible for implementation of these directives. As a result of these efforts, the availability of oxygen has improved in Delhi. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal thanked the central government for increasing the oxygen quota for Delhi. He said that some states had blocked the quota of oxygen supply allocated to Delhi, but due to the efforts of the central government, such obstructions to supply have been addressed.
केंद्र सरकार ने हमारा कोटा कल शाम को बढ़ा के 480 टन कर दिया है केंद्र सरकार ने। इसके लिए हम केंद्र सरकार के बहुत बहुत आभारी हैं। कुछ राज्यों की सरकारों ने जो दिल्ली के कोटे की ऑक्सीजन आनी थी वो भेजनी रोक दी। राज्यों ने कहा कि पहले हम अपने राज्य में इस्तेमाल करेंगे, दिल्ली का कोटा भी हम इस्तेमाल करेंगे, दिल्ली के जो ट्रक हैं वो जाने नहीं देंगे। लेकिन मैं केंद्र सरकार का और दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट का शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहता हूँ। पिछले 2-3 दिन के अंदर उन्होंने हमारी बहुत मदद की है, जिसकी वजह से अब ऑक्सीजन दिल्ली पहुंचने लगी है।
Amid all this, the Supreme Court on Thursday announced that it was taking suo motu cognizance of the COVID-19 situation in the country, including the shortages of oxygen and various other required medication. The court has appointed Harish Salve as amicus curiae in the case and said it wants to see a national plan to tackle COVID-19. Chief Justice of India, S.A. Bobde, said various high courts have been hearing cases on the matter which may lead to confusion. All of these cases may be withdrawn to the Supreme Court, he said. The bench said notice will be issued to the centre today and the matter will be heard on Friday. Meanwhile, the Delhi High Court also directed the centre to ensure oxygen is supplied to the national capital as per the location order and is transported without any hindrance. The High Court said there has to be strict compliance of oxygen allocation order issued by the centre and non-compliance would attract criminal action. Bureau Report, DD India.
Right, moving further, the Indian Air Force has roped in to transport oxygen tanks. C-17 and IL-76 aircraft of Indian Air Force have started airlifting big oxygen tankers from their place of use to the filling stations. across the country to speed up the distribution of much-needed oxygen. 2 C-17 airlifted, 2 empty Lin cryogenic oxygen containers and 1 IL-76 airlifted, 1 empty inox container to Panagarh. And now in reports, hospitals denying cashless facility. The regulator has stepped in. Insurance regulator IRDAI has asked health insurance companies to ensure that policyholders entitled to cashless treatment are extended the facility by all the hospitals that have agreed to provide the same. It is clarified by IRDAI that where insurers have an arrangement with the hospitals for providing cashless facility, such network hospitals are obligated to provide cashless treatment for all treatments, including treatment for COVID-19. The IRDAI statement followed reports of some hospitals not granting cashless facility for COVID-19 treatment. And Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had tweeted, this is what she tweeted: reports are being received of some hospitals denying cashless insurance. Spoken to Chairman IRDAI, and in March 2020, COVID included as part of comprehensive health insurance, cashless available at network or even temporary hospitals. And as on 20th April 2021, over 9 lakh COVID-related claims have been settled by insurance companies for rupees 8,642. And the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has appealed to the leaders of corporate India to come forward and supplement government efforts in fulfilling the rising hospitalization needs in view of second COVID surge. She said their prompt and targeted efforts will certainly help in providing the much-needed relief to the citizens during this difficult time. The ministry has suggested that the vacant buildings for disposal may be used for makeshift hospitals and provide temporary COVID care facility. Meanwhile, the ministry has allowed spending of corporate social responsibility, that is CSR, funds for setting up makeshift hospitals and COVID care facilities, including vaccination for general public to reduce stress on existing healthcare infrastructure. Right, and government is working arduously for smooth coordination between states, hospitals and also the suppliers of oxygen and vaccines to give relief to people in fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. And while addressing an event, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that provision of oxygen, vaccines and their logistics to people affected by coronavirus is being ensured. The Finance Minister stated that the Prime Minister himself is monitoring the situation with eminent doctors and vaccine manufacturers. She said a slew of announcements have been made in regard to the drug remdesivir, and custom duty has been waived and quantity for export has been held back for use in country, considering the requirement of remdesivir injection. These announcements are expected to increase the availability of the injection, and for oxygen supply, the government is identifying idle manufacturing capacities to match the demand and supply in the country. Sitharaman said that the way forward to tackle the current situation is through micro-containment zones so that life and livelihood can be protected. And also, the government has issued new guidelines for treatment of COVID-19 cases among adults. The guidelines suggested specific treatments based on the seriousness of the patient, that is mild case, moderate case and severe case. And in case of treatment for mild COVID-19 cases, which can be identified with a patient having upper respiratory tract symptoms and or fever without shortness of breath or hypoxia, such patients can be treated in home isolation and care. Patients must ensure physical distancing, indoor mask use, strict hand hygiene and stay in contact with treating physician. They must also monitor temperature and oxygen saturation. They must also seek immediate medical attention if face difficulty in breathing, have high-grade fever, severe cough, particularly if lasting for more than 5 days. And in case of treatment for moderate COVID-19 cases which can be identified with a patient having respiratory rate of more than 24 minutes, there is breathlessness and the oxygen level is 90% to 93% on room air. Such patients must be admitted in ward with non-rebreathing face mask. Further, see the chest x-rays, chest CT scan to be done only if there is worsening. And in case of treatment for severe COVID-19 cases which can be identified with the patient having respiratory rate of more than 30 per minute and breathlessness or oxygen level of less than 90%, such patients must be immediately admitted in ICU and given helmet or face mask interface depending on availability. Following treatment, procedures must be taken as per the guidelines given by the government. Right, my colleague Tapas Bhattacharya is joining me to give us more information on this. Tapas, cases continue to rise in India. Over 3 lakh cases were registered yesterday itself in the last 24 hours. We want to know about the current status in the sense that if you can give us the sense of the oxygen availability, the cylinders and also the bed availability.
Well, let's just put it this way: the situation is quite dire, especially in the national capital and in the Delhi NCR, where the availability of oxygen and the beds are a massive cause of concern. As we speak, some of the private hospitals, they are running short of oxygen. Some of them have 4 hours of oxygen, some of them have 16 to 20 hours of oxygen, but it varies. Most of the private hospitals are running short. And the Delhi's, if we take a close look at the Delhi's health bulletin, it will of cases, especially for fatalities. The number of cases in a day was 26,000, over 26,000, and the test at that particular time was 72,000, just over 72,000. And the positivity rate, if you calculate, was somewhere in the region of 36.24%, which again implies the fact that almost every third person who's getting tested is coming out positive, and as a major cause of concern, because most of the patients, as we see, are suffering from one or other oxygen-related issues. And as I spoke to almost many hospitals, and they try to understand the situation, bed situation. It is not a, situation to write home about. In fact, let me just show you the Delhi's Corona dashboard. If I can just show you, this is the Corona dashboard, and just if I can tell you that only 12 boards are 12 beds are currently available. ICU beds are currently available in Delhi region. So you can imagine the plight of people who are running from one end to another, trying to find out a bed for their patient. Including me, I've been trying from a couple of days, to get someone admitted. And it's a Herculean task. You are the paucity of oxygen, the paucity of beds with ventilator has been a major cause of concern in the national capital. The center, in fact, has tried to arrange and try to provide oxygen to the state. In fact, as of now, Delhi's earlier quota of oxygen was 378. It has been raised to almost 480. But considering the fact that the number of cases has spiraled in the national capital, in fact, if you take a close look at the last 1 week, almost more than 23,000 at an average cases have come in the national capital. So keeping that, the supply of oxygen has been hampered. There are 3 major decisions that the central government has taken yesterday, which will have a major far-reaching effect to control this particular issue. The first is the MHA order, which says that any oxygen tanker that goes from one state to another, there will not be any hampering of the movement in those in those states, and the GMs and the administration have been clearly made it, have been clearly instructed to make sure that no incident happens. There's no way those trucks will be stopped in any of the borders. So that is a major part that they have. The other 2 points that the finance ministry has come is that they have directed the hospitals to go for cashless insurance. That will actually help a lot to all those people who are struggling to get their patient admitted, as the private hospitals are charging an exorbitant amount of money for their wards. So that will go again a long way in kind of helping those in need to get themselves admitted. The second and a very important part that the government spoke about, telling the corporate world to come out in numbers to use their corporate social responsibilities and set up COVID centers, and that is going to again be it will provide a huge relief, a flip to this particular fight against COVID-19, because right now there is a massive shortage of COVID centers, and if the private sector come out in huge numbers, then it will be it will give a huge flip in the fight against COVID-19. As we speak, there's a list of hospitals that have come in. In fact, some of the hospitals have only the sponsors being Dayalupad, Purari Hospital, GTB, Babasaheb. They have 4 to 8 hours of oxygen left, and some of the private hospitals, super specialty hospitals, have only 4 to 5 hours of oxygen left in the national capital. So in that sense, providing oxygen, providing the infrastructure, and when I talk about infrastructure, I doesn't mean only the beds and the hospitals. It is also about providing the paramedical staff, the doctors, and that is where the major fight lies, Abhishek.
Absolutely, Tapas. Like you mentioned, the government is leaving no stone unturned. Corporate sectors also coming out in, they have appealed also to come out in good numbers. Government has requested, and also grim milestone that India achieved yesterday, over 3 lakh cases. In the last 24 hours, over 67,000 cases in Maharashtra itself, around 27,000 in Kerala, 26,000 in Karnataka. UP registered over 35,000 cases in the last 24 hours. Delhi, like Tapas also mentioned, over 26,000 cases, and Tamil Nadu over 12,000, that is 12,652. But Tapas, government has also issued new guidelines for treatment of COVID-19 patients. The guidelines have specific recommendations based on the severity of the case, be it mild, moderate or severe cases.
Yes, absolutely, and that's going to help the common man to understand when to go for the hospitalization, when to go for oxygen. The problem that a lot of people earlier was talking about, that even when you do not have a critical, problem, people used to go and get admitted, and that used to put a lot of strain on the already fragile infrastructure in the national capital. And so the government has come out with a set of guidelines, and these are the things, these are the do's and the don'ts that you can do if and when you get COVID infected. The 3 main things that are also currently going on. The Prime Minister, in fact, is keeping a hawk eye on the proceeding and the situation. In fact, currently an internal meeting is going on, and we've been told that in a short while he will also have a meeting with the 10 on the major states where the major caseload are currently going on. So that particular meeting will also be taking place, where the Chief Minister of all those states will have a talk with the Prime Minister, and they will tell their issues. The Prime Minister will listen to them and try to sort out the issues that is already coming into them. The other meeting that takes even more importance will be happening around. We'll be told that will happen somewhere in the region of 12:30. The VC will happen, where Prime Minister will meet with the leading oxygen manufacturer, where he will talk to them and will try to understand in which capacity the oxygen production can be increased manifold.
Right, Tapas, like you mentioned, PM Prime Minister Narendra Modi is holding 3 important meetings today. First is to review the meeting that is being held to review the COVID-19 related situation in the internal meeting, and also PM will be holding a meeting with chief ministers of high-burden states on the COVID-19 situation, and also, like Topaz was also mentioning, third meeting will be held at around 12:30 p.m. He will hold a meeting with leading oxygen manufacturers in the country via VC, that is video conference. Thank you, Tapas. Thank you for giving us those vital inputs. Keep tracking this story. We'll keep taking updates from you. Moving on, the cumulative number of COVID-19 vaccine doses administered in the country has now crossed 13 crore 54 lakh mark as part of the world's largest vaccination drive. Over 31 lakh vaccination doses were administered in the last 24 hours. All those above 18 years old can register themselves for COVID vaccination on the CoWIN portal and the Arogya Setu app starting 28th of this month. And India continues to battle COVID-19. In the recent past, the country has been reporting increasing number of daily new cases. In the last 24 hours, India has registered more than 3,32,000 new cases of COVID-19. 1,93,279 recoveries were recorded in the last 24 hours, taking the cumulative total of recovered patients to 1,36,48,159. And with this, the recovery rate currently stands at 83.92%. So India's total active caseload stands at over 24.28 lakh today. And the country's present active caseload consists of 14.93% of the total positive cases. And in the last 24 hours, 2,263 people have died of COVID-19. And the deadly virus has claimed lives of a total of 1,86,920 people across the country. Meanwhile, according to the Indian Council of Medical Research, as many as 27 crore 44,45,653 samples have been tested across the country so far. Out of this, 17,40,550 samples were tested yesterday. Right, so if you are eligible for the vaccination, if you are eligible for the jab, go and get yourself vaccinated. Moving on, talking about West Bengal elections now, noting that COVID-19 safety norms were being flouted in West Bengal during campaigning. The Election Commission on Thursday banned roadshows and vehicle rallies in the state with immediate effect and said no public meeting having more than 500 people would be allowed. The order said the Commission has noted with anguish that many political parties and candidates are still not adhering to the prescribed safety norms during the public gatherings. As per Election Commission's order, no roadshow, Padyatra shall be permissible, no cycle, bike, vehicle rally shall be permissible, no public meeting beyond the limit of 500 persons at a place subject to availability of adequate space with social distancing permissible. Permission for roadshow, cycle, bike, vehicle, Delhi, if granted, already stands withdrawn. And the campaigning for the 7th and 8th phases of assembly elections in West Bengal has gained momentum. In the 7th phase polls, 36 seats will go to the polls on April 26th, and in the 8th and final phase, 35 constituencies will go to the polls on April 29th. The counting of votes will take place on May 2nd. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address people of West Bengal virtually today at 5 p.m. PM Modi will address public rallies via VC in Malda, Murshidabad, Vardhan and Kolkata, while TMC chief Mamata Banerjee will also address the rallies virtually. Right now, we'll slip into a very short break. On the other side, more stories.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India. Your window to rising India. India's voice on global platforms. Latest news from India and around the world. In-depth analysis of global headlines. Watch DD India in your country. Available for downlink in Middle East countries. STTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 17 at 93.5 degrees east. HDTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 10 at 83 degrees east. For technical details, scan here. Switch to DD India now.
Welcome back after a short break. Going to Mumbai, at least 13 died in ICU after fire broke out at Vijay Vallabh Hospital in Virar, Mumbai in the wee hours today. The incident took place around 3 a.m. Patients were rescued and shifted to nearby hospital for treatment. The fire has been doused by the department. This is not the first time a fire broke out in Maharashtra hospital treating COVID patients. And earlier this month, a fire broke out at a private hospital in Nagpur, while last month a blaze broke out at a COVID hospital in Mumbai. Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed his condolences to those who have lost their loved ones in the incident of fire at a COVID-19 hospital in Virar. He hoped early recovery of those injured. PM Modi has approved an ex gratia of 2 lakh rupees each from Prime Minister's National Relief Fund for the next of kin of those who have lost their lives due to the hospital fire at Virar in Maharashtra, and 50,000 to those seriously injured. And Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray has also expressed deep sorrow over the death of patients in a fire at the ICU of Vijay Vallabh Hospital in Virar. After learning about the fire, Uddhav Thackeray spoke with the concerned officials and asked them to first prioritize extinguishing the fire completely and ensure that treatment of other patients continues. The Maharashtra CM has also ordered proper investigation to ascertain the cause of fire. He even directed the administration to immediately inquire whether the fire safety was adequate in the hospital. International news now. Now let's take a look at COVID-19 update worldwide. More than 14 crore 53 lakh people worldwide have tested positive for COVID-19 so far, while over 12 crore 33 lakh people have recovered from the virus. The deadly virus has so far claimed lives of over 30 lakh 85,000 people from across the globe. The United States continues to be the worst affected country by the COVID-19 pandemic, with more than 3 crore 26 lakh positive cases. Over 5 lakh 84,000 people have died of the virus in the US. Japan now. The Japanese government is expected to declare a state of emergency in Tokyo, Osaka and Kyoto the third time today, following a resurgence of new COVID-19 infections in the country. Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga on Thursday said his government will formally declare the state of emergency after meeting with experts. Japan has so far registered over 5 lakh 46,000 cases of COVID-19, while the deadly virus has claimed lives of at least 9,764 people in the country. The COVID-19 vaccine developed by Pfizer and BioNTech is effective at preventing symptomatic and severe disease in people with some chronic illnesses like diabetes and heart disease. The analysis of almost 1.2 million people by Israel's largest healthcare provider will offer further hope for countries as they scramble to get shots in citizens' arms, particularly those considered vulnerable. More than half of Israel's population have been fully inoculated since the country's world-beating vaccination drive began in late December. Some Spanish regions like Galicia and Navarre began using Johnson & Johnson's coronavirus vaccine to inoculate 79-year-olds on Thursday. Spain has already distributed the first batch of vials to regional health authorities, which are in charge of administering the injections. An initial shipment of 1,46,000 doses of the single-shot drug landed in Spain last week. but they were impounded in a warehouse on arrival. Over concerns, the vaccines cause a rare type of clotting disorder. Spanish health authorities had been waiting for updated guidance from Europe's EMA drug regulator, which announced a possible link between the shot and blood clots, but said the benefits outweighed any risk. A warning about unusual blood clots with low platelets must be added to the vaccine's labels. After a slow start, the national vaccination campaign has gathered pace, and so far around 7.6% have received the full course, while nearly 21% have received at least one dose. Italy now, the patients awaited a new form of monoclonal antibody treatment at Rome's Castelli Hospital to help them fight their COVID-19 symptoms. Patients are chosen for the treatment within 72 hours of being diagnosed with the coronavirus, and they have to have a no more than light to moderate symptoms. They arrived at the Castelli Hospital for an intravenous administration of the drug that is produced in a laboratory of cellular immunology and genetic engineering techniques. Local Health Authority Director Dr. Narciso Mostarda said that the monoclonal antibody treatments and this type of therapy is really important for patients who are COVID positive and home with mild or moderate symptoms. She also mentioned that it essentially avoids the patients becoming more sick and then needing to take up a place in a COVID ward. The therapy has already been rolled out in numerous countries but is still not widely used. Moving further now, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg addressed a global climate summit on Thursday. In a statement, Stoltenberg said global warming is making the world more dangerous. He added that floods, forest fires and droughts increase competition for scarce resources and fuel tensions and conflict, and that critical infrastructure is exposed to rising sea levels and more extreme weather.
See three areas where NATO has an important role to play in addressing climate change. First, understand. We must understand the problem so we can better address it. Second, adapt. NATO must adapt so we can continue to operate in all conditions. So climate change affects where and how we operate. We will therefore conduct an alliance-wide assessment of the impact of climate change on NATO assets and installations.
The Global Climate Summit, hosted by US President Joe Biden, is an event meant to resurrect US leadership in the fight against global warming after former President Donald Trump withdrew the country from international efforts to cut emissions. Moving on, the US Senate, with overwhelming bipartisan support on Thursday, passed a hate crimes bill to address a drastic rise in violence and discrimination against Asian Americans during the COVID-19 pandemic. The bill passed 94-1 with Missouri Senator Josh Hawley the only no vote. It must pass the House of Representatives, where Democrats hold a clear majority. US President Joe Biden has called for passage. Reports of violence against Asian Americans have risen since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic.
And this bill tells the AAPI community, who are seen as the other, who are often asked, where are you from, really? And I've had that happen to me while wearing the uniform of this nation with her flag on my shoulder, been asked, where are you from, really? Yeah, your dad has been here since before the revolution, but where are you from? This tells the AAPI community, we see you, and we will stand with you, and we will protect you.
European parliamentarians on Thursday voted on a motion to seek through the Council of Europe's governing body, the Committee of Ministers, the release of jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. A total of 106 MEPs voted in favor of the recommendation, 24 against it, while 10 abstained. French MEP and author of the report on which the recommendation is based said that if Navalny dies in prison, it will be a consequence of the Russian authorities' decision. In full conscience, the decision is based on a European Court of Human Rights ruling in the case of Navalny v. Russia. Navalny was arrested in January when he returned to Russia and jailed for 2.5 years in February. Moving on, Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday said he was ready to host his Ukrainian counterpart for talks on bilateral relations in Moscow at any time. The comments from Putin comes after Ukrainian president on 20th April challenged the Russian leader to meet him in eastern Ukraine's Donbas region for talks on ending the conflict there. Putin said if the Donbas region was a topic on the table, then Zelensky must first meet with leaders of the Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic before Russia could get involved. France now angered by slow issuance of licenses to fish inside British waters after Brexit. French trawlermen on Thursday blocked lorries carrying UK landed fish as they arrived in Europe's largest seafood processing centre. As per post-Brexit trade deal with the European Union, Britain has allowed the blocked fishermen to keep fishing deep into British waters, but only once they had received a license. Around 80 fishermen set off flares on the balloon docks, blocked 2 trucks with a barricade of wood pallets and barrels. French government late on Thursday urged the European Commission to take firm and determined action to ensure Britain applies the deal. Costa Rica, a space radar capable of capturing small objects that threaten the safety of astronauts and satellites, was inaugurated Thursday at a farm in northwestern Costa Rica. The radar installation, called Costa Rica Space Radar, can monitor objects that transit in low Earth orbit in the region of the planet near the equator. The 4 large panels that make up the radar are connected to the servers of the aerospace company Leo Labs in San Francisco, California.
This is the most advanced commercial radar in the world for tracking space objects. It's for a few reasons. This radar was designed to track very small pieces of debris. It turns out there are about 250,000 pieces of debris in space that are 2 centimeters in size and larger. They aren't tracked today, and they threaten satellites. In space, everything moves so quickly, approximately 8 kilometers per second, that even if a tiny piece of debris hits your satellite, it can destroy it.
And Palestinians on Thursday clashed with Israeli police amid a dispute over evening gatherings at Damascus Gate after iftar, while Israeli protesters gathered near. Meanwhile, a video on a social media app purporting to show a Palestinian slapping an ultra-Orthodox Jewish man on Jerusalem's light rail train has drawn protests by Israelis and calls by some right-wing politicians for tougher police action. Israeli police have fired stun grenades and sprayed foul-smelling skunk water to disperse the Palestinians, who in turn have discharged fireworks towards them. Well, we'll slip into another short break. On the other side, sports story.
I strongly urge other countries to follow India's example. High Commissioner, please let your Prime Minister know that today our nation of St. Kitts and Nevis has been put further along the path to defeat COVID-19 than we were a week ago. And for this, I say thank you. Could we give the government of India again a hand of commendation?
Namaste land.
مرحبا إلى الهند.
Zari India.
Salam India.
Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Nous sommes l'Inde.
نحن هنود.
India.
ما هندي هستي.
Mung Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
The changing world of news. Headlines that you wake up to. News that shapes your day. Stories that matter to you. The latest and most accurate updates. A fresh start to a new day. The Breakfast News, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. on DD India.
Welcome back. French Prime Minister Jean Castex on Thursday confirmed that domestic travel restrictions will be lifted on 3rd May and that secondary schools will reopen that same day. The French PM also said some businesses including bars, restaurants and cultural venues might reopen around mid-May as the COVID-19 situation is improving. He added that France's vaccination campaign was going well and by mid-May, 20 million people will have had a first shot. And Canada has suspended all flights from India and Pakistan for 30 days, citing increased COVID-19 cases detected in travelers arriving from these countries. The restriction went into effect at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday. Meanwhile, UAE also has imposed ban on all flights from India for 10 days starting 25th April. Moving on, US stocks on Thursday dived on reports that President Joe Biden planned to almost double the capital gains tax. The three main indexes on Wall Street also fell on reports that Biden planned to raise income taxes on wealthy, a proposal some said would be hard to pass in Congress. Biden is expected to propose raising the marginal income tax rate to 39.6% from 37% and nearly double capital gains taxes to 39.6% for people earning more than $1 million. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.94% to 33,815.9. The S&P 500 lost 0.92% at 4,134.98 and the Nasdaq Composite dropped 0.94% to 13,818.41. Indian equities continue to be under pressure today from unprecedented rise in COVID cases in India. FIIs continuing in the sell mode is a worry for markets in the short run, said an analyst. And among the headline indices, the S&P BSE Sensex was at 48,034 levels, down 45 points or 0.10%. On the NSE, the Nifty was hovering around 14,400 levels. In sports, Indian women boxers have put up sensational performances as they created history at the 2021 IBA Youth Men's and Women's World Boxing Championships and concluded their campaign on highly successful note with 7 gold medals in Poland on Thursday. All the women finalists in action: Gitika in 48 kg, Neoram baby Rojisana Chanu 51 kg, Poonam in 57 kg category, Vinka in 60 kg category, and Arundhati Chaudhary in 69 kg category, and T. Sanamacha Chanu in 75 kg category, and Alfia Pathan in 81 kg category registered victories and finished on the top of the podium. Previously, Indian women had won 5 gold medals during the 2017 edition of Youth World Championships held in Guwahati. India women's team also finished as the #1 team in the ongoing championship ahead of Russia with 7 gold medals. In California, visitors are enjoying hillsides carpeted in yellow mustard at Chino Hills State Park just outside Los Angeles. About 60% of the park's 14,000 acres is currently covered in the bright yellow exotic flower, which grows to 8 to 10 feet tall. Right, going back to our story on Prime Minister Narendra Modi meet. He is holding 3 meetings today. One meeting was held on, it was an internal meeting on measures to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic, and also he held a meeting at 10 o'clock with CMs of high burden states on the COVID-19 situation. My colleague Abhishek Jha is joining me to give us more information on this. Abhishek, what latest can you give us?
So Prime Minister is taking all these crucial meetings in order to come to engage the reality of the situation on ground of the COVID patients and the healthcare infrastructure across the country, especially in high burden states where the crisis and the cases both have deepened. In fact, next meeting is also going to happen among the oxygen suppliers of the country, and Prime Minister will be taking their point of view. What is the situation? How much of demand is being met? How much of demand is being put forward, and how much the capacity is trying to fulfill? Like what all can be needed? We have seen that recently government has tried to pull out all the logistical support from the existing platforms, like we have seen that how oxygen tankers are being airlifted by Air Force personnel, how the railway is providing racks, how the army is providing racks, and railway is providing their goods to carry the oxygen tankers from one state to another state, so that smooth and short journey could be completed in a very limited time frame, and the patients could be provided with the necessity medical aid to the supply of oxygen. So all these logistical arrangement, all these points of production and the point of demand, because we know that Delhi, there has been a huge surge in demand, but of course Delhi does not have so many industries which can divert their commercial or industrial oxygen to be used as medical oxygen. So Delhi has to be dependent on other states, and there has been some conflict in the last 2-3 days, where we have seen that different states not falling in line very eagerly and encouragingly to support each other, and everybody is trying to safeguard their own interests and own people. This cannot be justified in a state, in a country like India, where every state has to help each other at this time of crisis. So there has been a centralized, there should be.
Absolutely. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is holding internal meeting. He held a internal meeting on measures to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. And remember, he has cancelled his visit to West Bengal, and he'll hold the rally today at 5 p.m.
बैठक का कार्यक्रम है और ये सीधी तस्वीरें आप देख रहे हैं। और इस बीच हमारे साथ हमारे संवाददाता सुधाकर दास जुड़ रहे हैं। सुधाकर, लगातार प्रधानमंत्री की तरफ से बैठकें चल रही हैं। आज भी पहले आंतरिक बैठक हुई और अब सबसे ज्यादा प्रभावित राज्यों कोविड को लेकर लगातार
points will be discussed, and especially on the oxygen supply and also the availability of beds. And remember, Prime Minister will also hold a meeting with leading oxygen manufacturers in the country via video conference also. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also reviewed the COVID-19 related situation in an internal meeting, and very important points will be discussed, and very important cases have been surging, and India achieved a very grim milestone. Yesterday, in the last 24 hours, over 3 lakh cases were registered. Over 67,000 cases were registered itself in Maharashtra, around 27k in Kerala, around 26,000 cases were registered in Karnataka itself, and UP also registered over 35,000 cases. And talking about the national capital also, 26,000 cases were registered in the last 24 hours, and Tamil Nadu also registered 12,652 cases in the last 24 hours. My colleague Abhishek Jha is with us again. Abhishek Jha, very important points must have been discussed in view of COVID-19 situation in the country, especially on oxygen supply and also on the availability of beds. And states and center, they need to work together to combat this deadly virus.
Of course, Abhishek, and we know that how important it has been to create a coordinated and concerted effort in this time of crisis, where every state is reeling under pressure, and those states which have not been under pressure, they have potentially, foreseen a side where there can be a lot of pressure on their existing healthcare infrastructure, and what all could be done, what could be the measure that can be taken on priority basis, because we have seen that recently there has been some crisis, some shortage of life-saving drugs, some shortage of life-saving oxygen, medical oxygen supply, then there are shortages of doctors, paramedic officials, paramedic staff. So creating a sphere where every state can cooperate, every the point where the supply is in excess and the point where the demand is in excess can also be augmented, and a smooth logistical arrangement could be made for the supply of all the necessary medical aid and assistance across the state and country. That is one of the priority where the Prime Minister will be discussing all these efforts and what all the states could do, what all the private sector can do, what all the public sector units of various public sector enterprises can do in order to extend their existing medical infrastructure, existing O2 supplying infrastructure, and all that can be done, because we have to take every resource from every corner of the existing PSU, private sector, NGOs, individuals, and make a do list what all can be done to ease the pressure on the existing healthcare infrastructure, and extend some aid and assistance to the people in this hour of suffering. That is one of the priority that Prime Minister will be taking forward to while discussing all these important issues with the latest meetings.
Absolutely, Abhishek. And also cases continue to rise. Over 3 lakh cases, 3,32,000 cases were registered in the last 24 hours. Second consecutive day with over 3 lakh cases. And also, Abhishek, grim milestone that India achieved. Over 3 lakh cases were registered in the last 24 hours, but the government is leaving no stone unturned. They have requested also the corporate sectors to come out in numbers. They have come out with different restrictions also, but states and center, they need to go in hand in hand. That's what they must be discussing.
Of course, and they have urged the private sectors and corporate sectors to come forward and extend their helping hand in this hour of need. And there have been instances where the private sector have also taken initiative in extending their infrastructure and the capacity in the hour of need. The latest was yesterday evening. We saw how Jindal Steel Group Chairman Navin Jindal, he tweeted that he has an existing capacity of almost 500 to 600 metric ton of liquid oxygen available at one of his Angul plant in Odisha, and that can be used immediately. And he's also said that he has the capacity to supply another 100 metric ton of liquid oxygen for the medical purpose every day, and whichever states need it, they can take it. By evening, we saw how MP, Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan, they both got in connect, and finally it was decided that there will be a huge supply of oxygen from the Angul plant of Odisha to the state, Madhya Pradesh. So these are the kind of initiatives that are currently needed across the country, across the various sectors, and everybody needs to come forward with whatever capacity they have. They may have some logistical arrangement, they may have some available oxygen, they may create some staff or some buffer, a capacity where the facility can be used as a COVID care facility. So everything that we can pull in at this hour of need, that will be of an advantage in this fight against COVID pandemic. And this is what Prime Minister is trying to urge also time and again with the private sector, that all will be well, but then the need of the hour is that we fight together so that we can bring together also.
Right, and also Abhishek, talking about Maharashtra specifically, massive surge in coronavirus cases in the state, and the government is actually, Maharashtra government is reeling under the pressure of a complete lockdown from state ministers in order to contain the spread.
Of course, Abhishek, because the crisis is so sudden that many states, they are failing to understand the next steps that can help them ease the pressure on the healthcare infrastructure and create a sense of calmness among the public. Because we need whatever available resources and the studies we have on corona, that we need to understand that we have to create a system where the chain of spread is broken, and to break the chain we need to curb the movement of people across the places, and for that we need to put in curfew, some restriction in movement, and finally the lockdown, which will kind of entirely shut the spaces and markets and people from coming out of home unless it is very urgent and in some emergency situation. So will that be an option, or will that be the only step left for the Maharashtra government? That we'll have to see, because the spread is very harrowing. We are, every day we are getting to see the tales of how the condition of the COVID healthcare centers are not being able to cope up with the rising number of COVID patients, how the healthcare system and the facility and the staffs are under stress, and to deal with it, we need to have some decrease in the number of cases, and that can maybe the lockdown could be the last option, but maybe that is the only option available for the Maharashtra government right now, because the pressure is mounting on the Chief Minister whether will he be going for this lockdown, because once he imposes that lockdown, he will also have to create a mechanism where all the necessary services and the people who will be left in the lurch after the lockdown, they will be provided with certain basic abilities of to sustain their livelihoods and life during the time of lockdown. So lockdown cannot be an overnight decision. It will have to be well deliberated, and the backup mechanism to facilitate all the life and livelihoods of so many people who will be impacted with the lockdown, they will also have to be factored in while going ahead with any decision. So while that could be one of the toughest decisions that Maharashtra may have to take, we'll have to also see what support mechanism the Chief Minister and his cabinet in the state will be trying to develop on to have a successful lockdown.
And also, Abhishek, if you look at the cases have been going over 3 lakh. We are highlighting it again and again, over 3 lakh in the last 2 days and over 2,50,000 for the past 1 week, 2 lakh, over 2 lakh if I'm not wrong. But the good thing is that the recovery rate is also rising. The recovery rate, we need to focus on that also. But the matter of worry is the active cases.
Of course, recovery rate is quite a significant thing, and we can have some sigh of relief in that. But the thing is that the healthcare infrastructure is already occupied, and with each number of new infected patients, we are not being able to provide them the best healthcare facility. Take example of capital, Delhi. Take example of Maharashtra, where the cases have already spiked and have gone through the roof. So there are a number of recoveries also. That is something that we can have positive feeling about. But with each new patient getting infected and with each passing day, providing of assistance and helping medically to all those patients getting ill and getting critical. That is becoming some cumbersome process for a state or administrations to go along with, and this is one reason why there has been some sense of panic with certain states and certain geographical location, and the Prime Minister is trying to steer this whole operation of coordinated and an effort where every state is also joining hands with each other, and every private sector, all that private sector that can be of helping, in some sort of assistance, or maybe providing some equipment or medical gear, staff, providing their own facility, providing medical logistics, whatever they can. So everybody whoever has some sort of logistical arrangement or any assistance or aid available for treatment or facilitating any COVID-related, issues, that is welcome. And Prime Minister has tried to bring every resources and every individual, every participants on one platform. And these meetings that Prime Minister is holding in the last few days here, we have seen that he is regularly taking meetings with oxygen suppliers, the pharmaceutical suppliers, vaccine manufacturers, state CMs, officials, governors. So many meetings have happened. This is all in order to have a better understanding of what is the reality on the ground, what is the healthcare infrastructure on the ground, what is the number of cases, and what could be the foreseeable, stance where we can imagine that kind of cases and the kind of number of cases that will be coming to the healthcare centers for critical patients. So this is all that is in the mind when Prime Minister is taking all this meeting, and he's trying to find some solution or some sort of relief, at least for the time being, for the people who have been critically ill, and the larger people who are still safer, but then they have to follow the COVID protocol and how to make them aware and keep them away from this COVID pandemic.
Absolutely right, Abhishek, and government is leaving no stone unturned. Like I was mentioning it earlier, also they have requested corporate sectors to come out in good numbers. So also oxygen supply they have also been trying to get the enough oxygen supply in the hospitals also. But and also Abhishek, amid reports hospitals denying the cashless facility, the news came in that the regulator has IRDAI has stepped in. It's some sort of relief to the people who are actually struggling in the hospital, the cash crunch, the non-availability of beds, and it's some sort of relief for them also.
Of course, Abhishek, at this point of time, anything that comes handy, anything that becomes regulated is a big relief to the patient, because it's disappointing to understand, but we have to face with certain black marketing of certain drugs at some point at some parts in the country. We have also seen some duplicacy of duplicate medicines being supplied to some people. We have also seen some people trying to encash this opportunity and charging the patients some very inappropriate amount or exorbitant rate for the treatment of COVID patients. Insurance companies who have promised to take care of people in the hour of need, they are having their cold feet against this whole pandemic, that because so many number of claims are coming to them that maybe they are having some sort of panic reaction. So there has to be a regulatory mechanism where everything from supply of medicine to the treatment cost of patient to the insurance providers will have to be regulated and put to the task in a most appropriate way, where people could everybody can fall ill and can be can have some need of assistance or medical aid, but they should also have this relief of feeling that they are taking well care of. At least they are not being being felt as somebody whom can be exploited financially, or some black marketing of medicine they will have to face, or some insurance unscrupulous insurance companies or some steps or something that can actually keep their put them in more burden financially and emotionally, make them more distressed. These are the steps that government is trying to take in every sector of this whole COVID chain, if we say, from medicine to patients, admitting patients, to charging of cost per patients, and to ensuring that their insurance also reach them to reach to them in time. Everything has to be regulated and smoothened and quickened so that people, even in this hour of distress, can feel some sort of relief through the hands of government.
And then now meeting is being held with chief ministers of high burden states on the COVID-19 situation. The meeting is still going on. Abhishek, who all are present in the meeting? If you can elaborate on this.
So mostly the meeting is being held for the high burden states where the cases have risen in the recent times very amazingly, and now these states are in the most dire situation where they need all sort of help. If you talk about number of beds to admit the patients and critically to treat critical patients, number of ventilators, oxygen cylinders, doctors, paramedic staff, and all that is needed, because the numbers you see in Maharashtra, like 67,000 people being infected every day, that comes after the testing. It's a huge number. I mean, in the last few days, Maharashtra is continuously been showing high number of patients, and we have to admit the fact that with each passing day there has been so many recoveries also, but the burden on the medical infrastructure is so huge that it is actually collapsing in some part where hospitals are refusing to admit patients because they already had their beds full. Hospitals are not being able to provide ventilators and oxygen cylinders to everybody because the existing beds and the capacity is already full, and the overflowing hospitals. These are the news that we are getting from so many states, and this is on priority basis that the Prime Minister has been looking into, like how all this can be done. At least everybody should get the treatment in this hour of crisis, because we have seen that this whole COVID treatment is not as complicated as it becomes if the timely intervention or the medical help is not provided to the patient. So providing a patient with a timely assistance, very primary medical aid can actually help in not becoming critical and putting extra burden on the super speciality hospitals or super speciality beds. This is what is the need of the hour. So providing that basic healthcare is the necessity, and so many states are trying to do that, but then there has been resource crunch, there has been sudden spike in cases where the states have also been not able to manage this crisis. So this meeting, we can hope that Prime Minister will be meeting with so many chief ministers of the states and officials from various states, and some sort of coordinated mechanism could be designed where every state will have the infrastructure available of the neighboring state also if they are not being used. And maybe in the time of crisis, this can be the only way to help each other and wait for betterment for other as long as it takes.
Absolutely, Abhishek, rightly put forward by you. Stay with us, I'll come back to you. But the government has issued new guidelines for treatment of COVID-19 cases among adults. The guidelines suggested specific treatments based on the seriousness of the patient, that is mild case, moderate case and severe case. And in case of this is the graphic that we are showing you. In case of treatment for mild COVID-19 cases, which can be identified with the patient having upper respiratory tract symptoms and or fever without shortness of breath or hypoxia, such patients can be treated in home isolation and care. Patients must ensure physical distancing, indoor mask use, strict hand hygiene and stay in contact with treating physician. They must also monitor temperature and oxygen saturation. They must also seek immediate medical attention if face difficulty in breathing, have high-grade fever, severe cough, particularly if lasting for more than 5 days. And in case of treatment for moderate COVID-19 cases, which can be identified with a patient having respiratory rate of more than 24 per minute, there is breathlessness and the oxygen level is 90% to 93% on room air. Such patients must be admitted in ward with non-rebreathing face mask. Further, serial chest X-rays, chest CT scan to be done only if there is worsening. And in case of treatment for severe COVID-19 cases, which can be identified with the patient having respiratory rate of more than 30 per minute and breathlessness or oxygen level of less than 90%, such patients must be immediately admitted in ICU and given helmet or face mask in the face depending on the availability, and following treatment procedures must be taken as per the guidelines given by the government. And also, the Indian Air Force has roped in to transport oxygen tanks. C-17 and IL-76 aircraft of Indian Air Force have started airlifting big oxygen tankers from their place of use to the filling stations across the country to speed up the distribution of much needed oxygen. 2 C-17 airlifted 2 empty Lin cryogenic oxygen containers and 1 IL-76 airlifted 1 empty inox container to Panagarh. And India continues to battle the deadly virus COVID-19. In the recent past, the country has been reporting increasing number of daily new cases, and in the last 24 hours, India has registered more than 3,32,000 new cases of COVID-19. 1,93,279 recoveries were recorded in the last 24 hours, taking the cumulative total of recovered patients to 1,36,48,159, and with this, the recovery rate currently stands at 83.92%. India's total active caseload stands at over 24.28 lakh today, and the country's present active caseload consists of 14.93% of the total positive cases. In the last 24 hours, 2,263 people have died of COVID-19, and the deadly virus has claimed lives of a total of 1,86,920 people across the country. And the cumulative number of COVID-19 vaccine doses administered in the country has now crossed 13 crore 54 lakh mark as part of the world's largest vaccination drive. Over 31 lakh vaccination doses were administered in the last 24 hours. All those above 18 years old can register themselves for COVID vaccination on the CoWIN portal and the Arogya Setu app starting 28th of this month. Right, we urge everyone to get vaccinated, and you are eligible. If you are over 18 years, you are eligible for the vaccination from 1st of May, and you can register, like we mentioned, on CoWIN portal or the Arogya Setu app from 28th April, that is 28th of this month. Meanwhile, according to the Indian Council of Medical Research, as many as 27 crore 44 lakh 45,653 samples have been tested across the country so far, and out of this 17 lakh 40,550 samples were tested yesterday. And amid reports hospitals denying cashless facility, the regulator has stepped in. Insurance regulator IRDAI has asked health insurance companies to ensure that policyholders entitled to cashless treatment are extended the facility by all the hospitals that have agreed to provide the same. It is clarified by IRDAI that where insurers have an arrangement with the hospitals for providing cashless facility, such network hospitals are obligated to provide cashless treatment for all treatments, including treatment for COVID-19, and the IRDAI statement followed reports of some hospitals not granting cashless facility for COVID-19 treatment. And Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had tweeted, this is what she tweeted: Reports are being received of some hospitals denying cashless insurance. She said that she has spoken to Chairman IRDAI and also the chairman is S.C. Khuntia, and asked him to act immediately to address the complaints of denial of cashless claims by insurance companies. The finance minister further stated that in March 2020, COVID was included as a part of comprehensive health insurance and cashless available at networked or even temporary hospitals. She also mentioned that more than 9 lakh COVID-related claims for rupees 8,642 crore have been settled by insurance company. So IRDAI shall direct companies to prioritize authorizations and settlements of COVID cases. And the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has appealed to the leaders of corporate India to come forward and supplement government efforts in fulfilling the rising hospitalization needs in view of second COVID surge. She said that their prompt and targeted efforts will certainly help in providing the much needed relief to the citizens during this difficult time. The ministry has suggested that the vacant buildings for disposal may be used for makeshift hospitals and provide temporary COVID care facility. Meanwhile, the ministry has allowed spending of corporate social responsibility, that is CSR funds, for setting up makeshift hospitals and COVID care facilities, including vaccination for general public to reduce stress on existing healthcare infrastructure. And the government is working arduously for smooth coordination between states, hospitals and suppliers of oxygen and vaccines to give relief to people in fight against COVID-19 pandemic. While addressing an event, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that provision of oxygen, vaccines and their logistics to people affected by coronavirus is being ensured. The Finance Minister stated that the Prime Minister himself is monitoring the situation with eminent doctors and vaccine manufacturers. She said a slew of announcements have been made in regards to the drug remdesivir, and custom duty has been waived and quantity for export has been held back for the use in country considering the requirement of remdesivir injection. These announcements are expected to increase the availability of the injection. For oxygen supply, the government is identifying idle manufacturing capacities to match the demand and supply in the country. Sitharaman said that the way forward to tackle the current situation is through micro-containment zone so that life and livelihood can be protected. And talking about Mumbai now, at least 13 died in ICU after a fire broke out at Vijay Vallabh Hospital in Virar, Mumbai in the wee hours today. The incident took place around 3 a.m. Patients were rescued and shifted to a nearby hospital for treatment. The fire has been doused by the department, and this is not the first time a fire broke out in Maharashtra hospital treating COVID-19 patients. Earlier this month, a fire broke out at a private hospital in Nagpur, while last month a blaze broke out at a COVID hospital in Mumbai. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed his condolences to those who have lost their loved ones in the incident of fire at a COVID-19 hospital in Virar. He hoped early recovery of those injured. PM Modi has approved an ex gratia of 2 lakh rupees each from Prime Minister's National Relief Fund for the next of kin of those who have lost their lives due to the hospital fire at Virar in Maharashtra, and 50,000 to those seriously injured. And Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray has also expressed deep sorrow over the death of patients in a fire at the ICU of Vijay Vallabh Hospital in Virar. After learning about the fire, Uddhav Thackeray spoke with the concerned officials and asked them to first prioritize extinguishing the fire completely and ensure that treatment of other patients continues. The Maharashtra CM has also ordered proper investigation to ascertain the cause of fire. He even directed the administration to immediately inquire whether the fire safety was adequate in the hospital. Right, well, that's all we have in this news bulletin. Stay tuned for more news and updates. But before we go, we urge everyone to wear face masks before you step out of the house. And if you are eligible for the vaccination, go and get yourself vaccinated and follow our Mask Up India campaign. Namaskar.